welcome to what I imagine will be a super long video by the time I am done with it. Before we start, I'm going to say straight away that this isn't scripted or, I haven't planned any of this out at all, so I'm imagining it might be a little bit all over the place. There might be some rambling here and there. I do apologise, I am far too lazy to try and plan things out, and this will just kind of be done as it's done. So what I'll be covering is the kind of more advanced side of training mode, I guess you would say, beyond the basics of a character essentially. How do you go about really perfecting a character and really beginning to understand the character and things like that. So forget combos, forget how to move with a character, what's safe, what isn't safe on a basic level. I will be looking at some KOS specific mechanics around what is and isn't safe, and things like that. So again, before I get further into this isn't specifically going to only matter as a KOF player or anything like that. I think that the way I approach training mode, I approach it the same in any game, whether it be KOF, Street Fighter, anime fighters, old KOF, old SNK, old Capcom games, JoJo's, Karnov, Breakers, anything, absolutely anything that I play, I go into training mode with the exact same mentality, same idea, and kind of break everything down. So again, before I start, this won't work for everyone, and not everyone's going to find enjoyment out of this, and I think that people get the wrong idea that with training mode or with how they learn, one size fits all kind of thing. Like, it really doesn't. There are people who learn completely differently. This is personally how I find I learn and how it's most useful. And while I do this, I do take notes, and I will have my notes here. I usually write them down on paper, but I'm going to be typing them today to maybe show them kind of as I go through it, which will be really low budget. It's like literally just a Notepad++ file, because that is literally how I take all of my notes in the end anyway. So without any further delay, let's get into it. So the first thing to look at really is knowing KOF 13 is a game. You already know the game, you already know the character a little bit. What's worth looking at first and foremost is how to pressure and how to force the situation kind of thing. Mid-screen. The reason I say mid-screen is because we need to separate mid-screen and corner. And corner is something that you look at later. First you need to worry about getting them there, and how to kind of play that kind of pressure game and stuff like that. Now, I'll go into matchup specific stuff later, and that's where we'll start talking about how to kind of look at neutral and how to deal with specific patterns or certain types of player with the character and things like that. How we can use training mode to deal with that. But for now, I think what we'll be looking at is just the kind of universal, what are my basic frame traps and pressure. So the first thing I'll do is, I've already set it to like all guard. I feel that looking at confirms at this point, it should already be past that point. So what we do know is, looking at the frame data, is that most of K-Dash's lights are all +1. They're different only really in how they look, and basically their active frames, and stand B is 1 frame slower to start up, if I remember right. So with that, they all have the exact same pushback as well. This is something that's universal to 13, is that when a character has lights or stuff like that, most of the time, I think there's a couple of exceptions in here I won't get into really, is all the lights in the game, all the heavies and stuff like that, have the same pushback essentially. And that actually makes things really easy to learn and really universal, and it lets you use them in a different way to most games where that might be slightly different. And what I mean by that is, first, when we're building our pressure, and how I look at the game, is you need to create tells in your game so that you can make people do things. So as you know, in KOF, you know, pressure game is all hops, using your normals, things like that, using your specials with Iron Trigger and stuff with K-Dash, basic tactics for him. But you can't make someone do something if they don't think you're gonna do it. And what I mean by that is, well, I'll show by example basically. So one thing I know about K-Dash for sure is that, actually I need to change this to crouching just now, right? So after 2 lights he can actually cross up. And it doesn't matter what lights you use for this at all. Doesn't matter if there's a delay, because they're all the same. Oops. Yeah, so they're all the same. Now, why is that important? They're all +1, you know, what does it matter, right? The difference being mainly with the lights that I forgot to mention is stand B isn't cancelable, but crouch B is. So, we know that pressure-wise I can do this, and I can do this off of any set of lights. However, to stop this kind of thing, Yuri he can kind of react, I guess, but realistically he's more having to anticipate in the first place. So whether that be close C, whether that be buffering a DP of some sort, or whether that be forwards or backwards, buffering a DP backwards in this situation I would probably say is the safest option, and we'll look at that later. Because I've kind of took note that, you know, that's something that I might need to look at, is I'll put it down in my notes straight away. And behold, the most ghetto thing in the world is this lovely little Notepad++ document, right? Where I will put a 2 checklist, and this 2 checklist will be the kind of main thing to look at as we go forward here. The stuff at the top is stuff that's set in stone. The 2 check would be something I would check with the other character being in player 1 position where I have control. Why would I do that with Yuri? Well, because I want to see from Yuri's perspective what the safest options are to deal with this. So 2 lights and the cross up. And I know standard tactics are close C, maybe stand B, which is far range stand B. I'm sure at this range here he's at stand B range, not close B range, but if I jump, close B might come out, so who knows. So we'll look at that. We can look at DP going forwards and back, and EX or not, basically. So that's how I've got how Yuri would deal with this situation, right, or post this situation, if he's anticipating that cross up. So now I've got that down, I can forget about that and look at it later. But going back to building pressure, is I can choose to always go for the cross up off of a light. So I can tune's probably a bad word, but I can kind of trick my opponent into thinking after certain things I'll go for certain things. So every time I do this, I could maybe go for another one that's delayed in the Iron Trigger, or I could just use this to go straight to Iron Trigger and just push him away, which puts me at roughly his hyper hop range to DP him if he tries to jump at me afterwards or something like that. So why is it then important that every time I go for cross up off of this? Is because thinking of it in a real match, I know I am in training mode, but thinking of it in a real match, if he has to anticipate that, then that means he has to give up something else. So if he's anticipating me going into the sky, he will wait, look for that kind of air, going into the sky type of thing, and he might mash crouch C. So that again, I'll go back to my notes, I'll put mash crouch C. If he doesn't want to even think to anticipate, if he's just sure, he might just immediately press 2C. So no matter what he does there, the way I see it is I am +1 and my 4-frame crouch light kick is in range. So he needs a free frame move that will hit at that same range, and his only real free frame normal is close C. He's not in close C range, so So if I can get him to start anticipating and things like that, he can't jump out of this because there's only a 3 frame gap. He needs a 5 frame gap to jump, and his normals aren't there. So already I've built this kind of idea in my head that if I am pressuring with K-dash, how I can trick my opponent or condition my opponent is using that stand B instead. Because where I use crouch B, I can always use to pressure, and then maybe one time with stand B, instead of going for the cross up, I'll do the crouch B instead. Or maybe I'll always go for the crouch B after stand B, and then the next time I'll go for the cross up. Or maybe next time I just will do nothing because he might DP thinking he can't cancel this, his pressure is only going to be frame trap or regaining pressure kind of thing. So once you start kind of getting that idea down, you can start thinking about how to build. Basically I'm just talking about how to build pressure and how to apply it in a real match, and you think of yourself being in both positions. You need to have a basic understanding of both characters when you're looking at this kind of stuff in training mode. And this isn't something that would just be specific to Yuri and things like that. You can think about it for the rest of the cast, and how they would deal with it and what their options are and things like that. So your option at this point is to re-hop. You can rerun too. However, I actually don't like rerunning in this kind of situation, because in this situation he can press crouch B when I jump in straight away and still be able to block the jump in. It's just the way it is. And if I rerun, I might get tagged by that crouch B, and if he sees the run or if he anticipates the run, he can convert that into real damage. Whereas unless he has drive, basically, if I was to re-hop, his DP would be the worst thing that could happen to me. If he's got drive, it's DP, and if he's a really good Flaming Yuri player, it's DP into infinite and I die, whatever, who cares, right? But we'll ignore that. We'll ignore that risk. But it's essentially assessing the risk at this point, as your options are what your options are. You can do like something like 5C, but what's the point? Like to there, I see that 5C, one, it would probably lose to his other buttons, and it doesn't really go into anything, except maybe EX trigger, but it's, you're looking for something that doesn't exist already, basically. Next we can look at 3 lights. So 3 lights still leaves me in range for Iron Trigger. So what's important here is I can actually have Iron Trigger happen straight away, no matter what. Now, I don't know the speed of Iron Trigger. I do know the speed of Iron Trigger, and I do know that he can actually hop out after that stand B or whatever to kill me, basically. So if I end in stand B and try to frame trap with Iron Trigger, what can Yuri do? So I'm looking at what Yuri can do there. So whether it's, can he press a button to interrupt it, can he jump, can he hop, things like that. And that again is something I would test alternatively kind of thing with Yuri as player 1, because I can have it happen. I can basically have the same string happen every time with K-dash, and no matter what, there's no timing variance of what he'll do, basically. So I'll explain later when I go to do it, but basically it's better if you, anything that you don't have to learn to do yourself, it's better to look at from the perspective of the other character, basically. So anything that isn't fully automatic. So like one thing as well as I know cancelable lights, most of them are cancelable in the recovery, and I do know that if I put one guard jump on, this is a true string. So this is true, I've already figured that out way earlier. However, that worries me, because it means that after my crouch B and stuff like that, it's kind of annoying to do, but basically after my crouch B, I'm always going to have like true strings, which is great in some cases, not so great in others. So I can frame trap after my crouch B, but say I'm at the max distance, where another crouch B just wouldn't hit. Stand B would hit, but again I can't really frame trap with the stand B. I can, but I don't get anything. I don't get anything at all. I can maybe persuade him not to jump there, something like that, but it's not good, essentially. So what am I looking for at this point is, well, I know I can delay my cancel, and can I delay my cancel long enough to catch him pressing buttons or trying to jump or trying to get away or anything of that nature. So I failed it there. Doesn't mean I shouldn't keep trying. There we go. So I've now identified that yes, I can do that. And it's something to look at with all characters. Kdes is a very specific character for this kind of thing, in that without being able to delay there, the kind of end of his string would be very open, and he would be very linear, I guess, and it would be very easy that once, you know, these kind of strings end, you know, he can either do true block string or he can't do anything, and you can get away, you can backdash or something like that, whereas this prevents those options basically. But what we can look at as well then is, since I mentioned it, we can, oops, oh, I can't make him yet. So let's make him backdash, right? So he's, this is the awkwardest thing to do. And I don't actually think this will work. Surely I can catch his backdash, but I'm not sure. And the only way to test this singly is to do that. However, what I have noticed there is that it knocks down, basically. So it will always knock down because the backdash is first frame airborne. I can catch the backdash. At least I've come to the conclusion I can catch the backdash. There's always the possibility that the timing's wrong and things like that. This is something that you would have to figure out by experience. This is definitely something that's better with a second person, as opposed to using the recording function in that way, where I'm kind of trying to play the recording function and do the attack at the same time. It's not an optimal way to do things, but it's a way to do things by yourself without a second player. But essentially what I've figured out so far in the pressure is that 2 lights goes into a cross up, so I can add that to the notes. 2 lights go to cross up, any 2 lights. And then I figured out that I can do 3 lights before they're out of range, so I can do 3 lights before they're out of range. Lights cancelled to iron trigger. It's true. Delaying cancel makes untrue, which is good in some ways, not so good in others. If they start mashing, blah 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 blah. Same old scenario. So let's put this back up just to kind of show you, right? So far this is basically what I managed to figure out in what is maybe like 10-15 minutes work. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a good start. And taking note, I am trying to explain things as I go and not jumping straight in. So I figured out that no matter what lights I use, I can cross up. So what that means is I can start using different lights to insinuate different things are going to happen. So I said the stand B, I can start using it a lot for cross-ups, and then my opponent thinks that I'm going to cross up because I did stand B, I can do something else and things like that. It's a good start. And going from there, I figured out, you know, I've got 3 lights no matter what. I believe that Crouchy is actually the exception to that rule. That's something that I just happen to know. I would test this normally as I go through it as well, so I just kind of want to point that out. But it's hard to kind of do this thing when I've got some prior knowledge to this level, but not all of it. Like, before I started this, I only just figured out that based on those lights that I can cross up when they're crouching and things like that. Obviously you can't cross up standing unless you're very specific characters and things like that, and this generally is not going to happen, especially not with a normal hop and not with a hyper hop. So Crouchy is the exception to the rule, basically. Crouchy only 2. So maybe then I can keep in mind with if crouch A is only 2, we're setting back to crouch. Crouch A is only 2. I can use crouch A as my cross up tool, or my cross up conditioning. Yeah, there we go. That's the word. It took me a while. So from there, it doesn't look like we've made very much progress, and so far we've figured out that essentially with lights alone and the iron trigger, that we have some kind of pressure game on the ground. We can create something, we can make them want to do stuff, basically. Even after 3, we can either not delay or delay. You know, they want to get out, they want to reset back to neutral, we can either trick them into staying in that position, and because we can trick them with that delayed cancel, we can then use that to go in and things like that. And you know, if he was to buffer DP, or we can use that to kind of go in on the ground or anything like that. So long as we have some kind of threat that will leave them there, that's what we're looking at. And I do actually apologise because I just realised I've left this up. But what I'm meaning is, after 3 lights, I have, because of the delayed iron trigger, after the crouch B, I have the you must stay on the ground, basically, which is something that I don't have with the stand B version, because he's able to jump out, because it's too late at that point. So I've figured that out, right? So he can jump after the stand B iron trigger. I think I mentioned that maybe a little earlier, I might have skipped over it. But it is something that I do need to test with Yuri as player 1 and K-Dash as player 2, so I'll look at that a little bit later. So stand B iron trigger can be jumped out of. It's not fast enough to keep them on the ground, and it doesn't stop them. So that means that most of my strings, if the third one is a stand B, what basically I cannot stop them from wanting to essentially get out, and that's problematic. So let's go back to stand on and all guard, and we'll record the jump away, hyper hop away. I can't really catch this hyper hop away. Unfortunate, but this is just how it is. I can't really catch him, and if he presses the button as he jumps away, like say jump B, which is a really good button, if I were to try and run away or try and chase him, it'd be very, very difficult. Oops, that's just me doing it too early, I'm sorry about that. This is one of those things that, again, it's much better to use a second person. I can maybe get a trade or something like that, but basically I'm resetting to neutral. I am pushing him back, which is good because he's wanting to do that, but it's nothing foolproof, and that jump can be countered in so many ways. At this point I am at the perfect range where I cannot cross up or anything like that, so his DP is like the best thing ever. At best I can super jump over him, but my normal jump, my hops, nothing will cross up anymore. So he can always be ready for the DP. I can always do run and crouch B or something like that to mix it up, but I need to think I am not in the best position doing 3 of these. Like, my pressure becomes worse the more lights I do. So I need to try and avoid that situation as much as possible. I can go through all the different options that Yuri has and K-Dash has for this all day, all I want. But at the end of the day, there's not really much to say about it. The best thing I can do maybe is Iron Trigger, EX Iron Trigger, because EX Iron Trigger I believe cannot be jumped out of post stand B. It can, so forget I even said that. I've just learned something new, and this is what I mean. This is by testing. I had assumed that stand B Iron Trigger, EX Iron Trigger was fairly safe, but it's not. So stand B EX Iron Trigger, he can jump out of it. And can he jump back? Well, that's definitely something to keep in mind. So if I were to go, oops, let's put all guard back on. Bam, bam, bam. Again, this is something that would be better looking at as player 2. As K-Dash being player 1. Yuri is player 1, sorry. Because post stand B is completely automatic because it's not cancelable and the buffer window that's in 13. So again, it's something to look at as Yuri with player 1. So let's look at stand B, iron trigger stuff kind of later. After 3 lights. After 2 lights, blah blah blah. I think I already got this in my notes, so I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but to kind of expand on it a little bit just now. So already I figured out mid-screen my options are essentially I want to stay or stick to 2 lights. This is what I see most K-Dash players doing, so what I now want to know is why not do heavies, and to put it simply, this is something that most characters in KOF have. I feel like if you're a KOF player and you're watching this, you should already be well aware that heavies tend to be the end of your pressure because they aren't plus, they aren't fast in the sense that they go by quickly. Like, heavies are fast, some of them are the fastest normals in the game and things like that, but they have the most blocks done, the most hit stop, they're the most obvious that they're happening kind of thing. Most of them aren't, plus some of them are unsafe. A couple are even, things like that, but some are unsafe even on hit. And for example, if we once again go to a 1 guard jump, and without even looking at the frame data, we can tell, you know, Gash very minus after his close C. His forward A isn't the best either. You know, things like that. It's not good. I don't want to end my pressure there because at that point it basically means that I can no longer press my advantage. I can maybe do something with iron trigger again, but it looks to me like I cannot delay the cancel, so it's always going to be true. Essentially, heavy ruins your pressure, and it's especially true for K-Dash, is no matter what heavy you use, your pressure basically ends. You can only really go into true block strings post using a heavy move. You don't really gain anything from using a heavy move, so what I put down in my notes is heavies not good for pressure, combo only mostly. You might think, well, you can use your heavy and you'll get more damage from doing a frame trap and things like that. It is very true. However, the fact that I'm giving up all of my advantage, literally all of it, all of my options, being minus at the end of my string, and basically betting the heavy, and in most cases I'd have to be very close to do that, means betting it when I have other options. So like doing a close heavy would be like doing it there. I can't really do anything else with it, and doing that off a stand B when I can do like, oops, but I can do like stand B and then 2B, confirm, DP, things like that. You know, I think I can get 2 in, yeah, and then I get a full combo win. That was all my pressure. Those 2 crouch Bs after that stand B still leave me open to do other things, because that's a confirm in itself, those 2 crouch Bs. So basically heavies, going into pressure and stuff like that, look at the frame data as much as you can to kind of identify what buttons you should be using in pressure. Most of the time it will be buttons that are fast, and in most fighting games that would be lights, and I mean fast overall. I don't mean fast as in the fastest buttons and things like that, because at the end of the day what matters the most in a lot of these cases is that you want it to go by quickly. So every time you hit with a heavy in this game, there's a lot more stop than there is if you hit with a light. So a light is like, oh, I hit with a light, away we go. A heavy is like really easy and really obvious to see in comparison. So it's something that you want to avoid as much as you can. Giving your opponent the idea of exactly what you've just done all the time isn't good. So essentially roll out heavies immediately with K-Dash, and if you are looking at other games and things like that, look at what's plus, and then in game look at what's quick, what's hard for you to notice immediately kind of thing. If someone was pressuring you, you need to think on your own level, and you need to think honestly to yourself. And I know some people think like, oh yeah, I would be able to react to that, but you really need to question yourself and whether or not you can actually react to things like that, because if you don't, you'll never be able to make this method that I use work for yourself, kind of thing. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't work for everyone, so if you can't realistically put yourself in that situation or imagine yourself being on the other side of the pressure, then you look for another way that helps you learn. But for now, I can't really give you any tips on how to make this work for you if you can't get your head around it already, kind of thing. So, going back, so we've already figured out now that there's some things we need to look at with the Yuri as far as the mid-screen pressure goes, and I've already roughly got what my mid-screen pressure game is. I know all my buttons and things like that, I know what's decent and what isn't decent, and I know general tactics. But what we're going to look at next, before we go into the corner game, which I think is more interesting for K-Dash and will probably take longer, is we're going to actually switch to Flame Yuri and look at some of the things that we already looked at, as well as test what is and isn't safe from a KOF perspective. And I'm sure you get what I'm meaning by that. Some people who don't play KOF as much might not, but you're about to see it's to do with the universal mechanics, essentially. And the universal mechanics in this game, some things will be more or less unsafe if people make use of them, essentially. So let's start looking at that. And there's one thing I forgot to look at, I just realised, and we'll have a look at it when we jump back to K-Dash, is that his stand A whiffs on crouches, and there's a couple of things I need to talk about with that, so I'm just going to put it down in my notes to look at. This is something that I would say is very basic to the character and very basic to KOF, which is why I didn't immediately kind of think about it, but it is definitely part of the pressure game for K-Dash, as not every character gets the whiffing stand A on a crouching character, such as Yuri, neither his close A nor his far A whiff. So it is something I need to look at. So with this in mind, let's set K-Dash to all guard. The reason for all guard is because I want him to block basically immediately. And what we're going to look at is what we talked about before. So we've got 2 lights into a cross up, and this is hard to actually get down in a recording, which may or may not surprise you. This is due mostly to the fact that when you're recording, the first player basically can only ever be hit and standing up, which sucks. Again, this is something much better to have as a second player, but you can work around it. So let's start. So I'm gonna hope that that's the cross-up timing, right? And it is. Okay, it hit crouching, which is good. And obviously if I stand up, it doesn't work. So if I'm anticipating it, it's fine. And immediately the first thing I test, stand B, and a reversal stand B will beat that jump in. Clean. There's no thinking about that whatsoever. So I need to then look at how K-Dash can deal with that specifically. So talking about the Yuri matchup, so I'm going to make another part of my notepad here is Yuri matchup. Now normally I would write these down and I'd have separate pages for separate things and things like that, so the Yuri matchup will be on another page. But for now, in the notepad document, it's just Yuri matchup stuff. So when going for cross up, if Yuri mashes stand B, he will beat K-Dash. Right, so let's just put that down. Right. So I need to find ways around that. So it's like kind of, I wouldn't say rock paper scissors, but I need to now figure out how to beat that. But I need to also look at what his other options are. So I mentioned buffering a backwards DP, and I buffered that while I was still in the block stun from the stand B, and it is definitely possible. 2C will beat it. Late 2C will mean cross up DP, things like that. That sucks. That really sucks. That is the case. The long buffer time means that this is definitely possible, and there's not much thinking about that at all. How would I beat that? Well, it depends on what he's doing. So reverse DP also beats it. So what I've got is Yuri matchup, 2 lights, and a cross up. Means one of 2 things. So reverse DP also wins, and I'm sure a forward DP will win as well. From a standpoint of, yeah, it looks like it'll just beat it every time. So I'm trying to like go from a how long it would take for me to react, and it would be basically the apex of Kirasu's jump, and essentially a forward DP will also win. So what I'm slowly understanding is that this isn't actually very good of an option. However, we can look at how to bait certain things, you know, and how to beat certain things later as we continue on this kind of core looking at Yuri and stuff like that. So what else did I say? Mash and crouch B, mash and crouch C, sorry, also works. That will definitely work because it's kind of just a universal thing. If I'm just mashing that, it's definitely going to work. And close C, I imagine, will work as well, and that could work on reaction. Yeah, I could definitely see that being on reaction. Maybe a little bit late, depending. But if they're anticipating it, I could see someone close C'ing on reaction. So close C on reaction with anticipation. And I'll say that to the forward DP as well. The reverse DP is fairly safe and bufferable. Personally, I don't think that is something that you would need to react with, because doing it, there's not much to doing it. You're just pressing the button when you see him go into the sky, essentially. There's no... This is basically the best option. So in my best option for Yuri, right, so I'm going to put that down in my notes, and I'll show you what kind of my notes have been built here. So 2 lights into cross up, go away stupid thing, and 2 lights into cross up, all this stuff he can do basically to stop that. Reverse DP is probably the safest option, and I can gather that based on prior knowledge and experience, and just how it's done. So let's look at if K dash does, whoops, this time. My timing is really bad. Whoops, I've got this up in the way anyway, but yeah. That's very strange that missed. Oh, it works if I'm blocking, but it misses if I'm not blocking. So what I've now figured out as well is post 2 lights, the 3rd light can miss if I'm not blocking. So what I've figured out now is I can do up to 3 lights before out of range, crouch A only 2. After 2 lights, 3rd can miss if it's going to hit. Alright, so I've seen that is now a thing. So let's look at it from a perspective of... And again, the exact same thing happens no matter what light it is. It looks for things. Oops. Try and get like... If I get like a super rapid fire light. No. But it still doesn't feel like it works. And that sucks, but that's another unfortunate reality of playing this character. So, let's look at... So let's just assume, right, that this is... They're going to block, right? Because, I mean, not blocking is a very significant thing to do. If he just runs in a little bit, then it'll still work. So, let's once again go through Yuri's options. So the first thing I did was I mashed stand B. So let's mash stand B in this situation. Beats it, goes over the B clean. So what I know is then it also beats to crouch B frame trap. Also beats crouch B frame trap. Okay, and it'll probably be anything slow because I'm only +1. So what I'm very quickly seeing is that stand B as the second light is kinda bad because I don't have anything to stop Yuri just doing stuff. Stand B seems to beat every option that I've got so far. Clean. It beats my jump and things like that. So what if I did a full jump? So if I do a full jump, I can beat this. If I do a full jump, you can't really press close C afterwards. So let's have a look. So this also beats close B frame trap. So let's format this a little bit. So let's have like a equal sign there. And if full jump, then Yuri cannot mash close C afterwards. And if you can't mash close C, that means you can't mash crouch C. Can't mash crouch C either. So that's what I've got so far. However, what then worries me is DP. DP is clean. It's unfortunate. So DP wins. So let's put like a 2 equals sign, right? So let's put like a so I will format this out a little bit better later, but so far you can see that the notes are building kind of minus and things like that. Minuses and pluses, right? So Yuri mashes crouch B, stand B, and also stand B. So this is all kind of one section, right? A full jump and Yuri stand B. Then Yuri can't mash his full jump post 2 lights after mashing stand B. So not the best, right? So there's 2 lights in the cross up thing. It's slowly dying off of stand B. B, but what I do know is that I can still do the thing off of the other kind of buttons. And what I'll be looking at then is instead I'll look at crouch A. So let's throw stand B away. Call it crouch A instead, right? So it's the same cross up. The same thing happens, and the exact same situation will happen because the light's pushing back, blah blah blah. However, what I have if I do crouch A is, oops, sorry, I hit the mic there. What I've got is delayed iron trigger beats all options. Yuri has. This isn't entirely true, which I'll show. But let's put this back on top. So let's have a look at delayed iron trigger. This is one of those things where it's going to be kind of hard again. I think maybe that will get it. Yes. So there we've got the delayed iron trigger. And let's talk about the backdash that we talked about before, and it looks like yes, we can catch the backdash. So no matter what, delayed iron trigger beats backdash, beats jumping, beats mashing, I'm sure. Yeah, because there's not a big gap at all. So it beats mashing, beats everything. Delayed iron trigger is 2 lights and the cross up any 2. Delayed iron trigger good option. Post. The down trigger is a good option. Post 2 lights. Yeah, there, let's go with that. Right. So we can say stand B is bad because it cannot do delayed down trigger. So let's put that in the note. Stand B is bad because cannot delayed down trigger. So what stand B does essentially is it limits our options more, and that's something that we don't want. We don't want our options to seem more limited to the opponent. So doing stand B as the second light, we can say is basically worthless because it has the exact same frame data and things like that, and essentially it doesn't give us any additional benefit over doing crouch B or crouch A, and we still have that mixed up between crouch B and crouch A, which are mostly the same plus frames, but we have that option of, what do we call it, conditioning, by going, oh, every time I crouch A I do this, and every time I crouch B I do this, and then mixing that up. So that option's still there, and we still want to be using both of them because they're both still useful for that. The downside to crouch A is it isn't a low, whereas crouch B is a low, but it is a case of we can use these for conditioning and making the opponent think that after certain ones we will do certain things. So again, jumping back to Yuri matchup, right? So we've seen so far that stand B for K-Dash is bad, and we've looked at now, we've got this delay down trigger going, and it seems to beat every option. So what if he DPs after the crouching? All 3 hits. So DP except CDP, except CDP, and if I do CDP there, I know Yuri can cancel that into this command grab, and it definitely works. In range for a combo. So Yuri is in range for a combo post that point. That sucks. That sucks. And of course the XDP will also work. But these are huge risks. You can just do nothing post that crouch A. Nothing at all. So from a risk reward factor, you need to think that your safest option is a delay down trigger because it beats everything bar a DP so far. With that in mind, with the idea that this is, you know, of those 2 lights, I think we've covered as much as I kind of can about that situation. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can cover and things like that, but we've seen basically already that most of what happens there is that delay down trigger is your best choice. I mean, crouch C will lose to crouch B, I imagine, so let's just check, right? So if we do it again, oops, yeah, so crouch C will lose to crouch B frame trap, so let's put plus crouch C will lose to crouch B frame trap. So we've got that done, and his DP doesn't work, or his DP probably will work in that frame trap as well. So let's think about that actually. So what we've got then is we can do crouch A and then crouch B there. Yeah, DP still works, right? Yeah, so DP beats crouch B frame trap as well. So DP beats crouch B frame trap. So what we've got so far, let's look at the notes again. This is what I have from my notes on Yuri, and you can ignore this up here. This is just a reminder for me when I go back to K-Dash to look at this stuff. So Yuri matchup notes, specifically that kind of post 2 lights, right? So like we can go for like post 2 lights, 2 lights, mix up, right? So we already know what K-Dash can do, and we've put that up here. 2 lights cross up, any 2, delay down trigger is good option, blah 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 blah. Delay down trigger, so I'm not too sure. So that's what we've got so far. And then obviously we can look at if going for cross up. You can do that reverse DP. So we're looking at this. So this stuff, it doesn't really matter anymore. We already know you can close C and stuff like that. We'll be K dash going for cross up. So what we've got so far is we've got kind of muddled up notes, which will be is kind of I'll fix later kind of thing in post anyway, normally. But for now, what we've got is essentially problems in that, you know, we've seen that Yuri can do a lot of stuff to beat K dash, and what we haven't looked at yet is there any way to beat that kind of reverse DP option that he's looked at? Personally, no, there isn't really. I already know this. If it's done right, there's not really much you can do. But we'll look at our delay down trigger again, and then I'll talk about how if you start getting them to do this though, it is actually good for you. So let's have a look. I think that should have got the delay. Yeah, so I got the delay there, right? See, it doesn't really, and you can do it post locking the 2, and that's the buffer in there. That buffer is something that's so very hard to deal with. So your iron trigger can't beat the buffer, right? So what we're looking for is how to beat reverse DP buffer. So minus delay down trigger doesn't work. Doesn't work. It also ends your pressure, so you don't want that. So it doesn't really work. And reverse DP reactable to the cross up. What this does mean though is he can't react. If he goes to buffer this, he can't be mashing stand B. He can't be ready to DP forward realistically. I mean, he still can, I guess, you know, if you want to really break it down. But if he's focusing on going for this option, he's focusing on going for this option. He's not going to choose another one, and that lets you use 3 pressures, so you can jump in for free and things like, not free, but as we have looked at, he can just kind of press C early, and it'll kind of hit you regardless, which is unfortunate. But what I do know is, if he goes to back after buffing this, he can't actually close C. So what we can put down is as a plus, based on our own thinking, and this would have to come something that would mostly come from experience. You can kind of figure this stuff out in training mode, but it'd be mostly, I'd say, by accident. But it would mostly come from experience or looking into Flame Yuri as a character. So we've got, say, Kosi can't be done with back C, as we'll get Rekka if buffered RDP. So we've got that down. That's, you know, half decent. So we've got something. But what if I just did like another crouch B? Like as a frame chat. That time it did hit, so you can get 3 lights to hit all the time, but not always. Depending on the speed, then it's not something that you'd want to rely on, I guess. But maybe every time. So let's have a look. So that managed to combo as well, but it is also a frame chat. It's not true, and I can just jump out. So frame trap crouch B won't really beat it. So we've got frame trap crouch B won't beat RDP buffering. What if I did like a straight up crouch B, crouch B, crouch B? again, it's something that could work. It can work, but your can work, but low reward. So crouch B X3 can work, but low reward. Guessing he will stand up, and also not consistent, because depending when he buffers it and when you press the button, it will depend whether or not he gets hit, because he's only standing up for a very, very short period of time and he's crouching for the rest of it. So it's not the biggest plus, but you've got something there, right? Say we go for that, right? So we can get reward, but we're betting an EX bar on that, and then K-Dash can do his combo and stuff like that. So it's something and it's there, but I still think the main thing you need to look at then is if he buffers the RDP and you go for... Oops. Apologies. Oh, that's not what I want. Go for that jump C. So the biggest problem is you can buffer that RDP well and just wait and press the button. But realistically, it's not something I'd say. I say it's reactable for sure. You just press the button when you press the button. Because you're already anticipating. So it's not good to go into the sky afterwards, because you can just press the cloak down C. So say minus normal hop can lose to crouch C on reaction to going into there. Unfortunate reality. So what if we were to instead do a neutral jump? Crouch C still works. Would it be anything else? Nah, not really. DP still works, things like that. So normal hop post 2 bars doesn't seem very good at all. And it loses to very much the same stuff. So, I apologise for the yawning. So far, what we've managed to figure out is that to this point, and I do apologise, I'm kind of thinking about how to explain this. So far we've kind of got this idea that post 2 lights, there's this kind of large mix-up game where there's a lot to think about for both characters, and depending on what characters do, there are different options to beat that and things like that, and there's safer options that might get less reward or might end the pressure and things like that. And it's something that when you're looking at all this afterwards, when you're breaking it down, you need to think about the risk rewards for both sides, and you know what players will tend to do, what kind of players will do certain things. You know, if they're defensive, they might not do anything, they might stay blocking, they might try and react to something instead of pressing that stand B, and so that your delay down trigger won't work, or you know, you might have scared them enough that your delay down trigger will work. You might be so confident you'll use delayed EX sign trigger to get as much damage as you can off that opportunity where you force them to make a move. And I think this covers that first part where we talk about 2 lights into the cross up and what happens afterwards. So what we also looked at was stand B iron trigger. Stand B iron trigger can be jumped out of, and this can happen regardless by the seams of things. So what we'll do is we'll put this in a kind of general thing, so we can check like what the kind of situation is of that. So let's have a look at stand B iron trigger. So before we were doing 2, even if we do 3, it won't make much of a difference, I don't think. So let's look at doing 3. Let's look at doing 2, actually. Let's stay in charge of things, right? Punished. Okay, that's not good. What if I was to do... Whoops. So now I've got iron trigger shoot. No. Every time. And that was an A iron trigger, I believe. Like that, and it can be jumped out of and punished. It might trade, that's good. But if he wants an easy punish, he can go straight for the jump CD, which means he doesn't have to wait. And then punish. Sucks. Basically, stand B iron trigger isn't a good option. That's it, it's as simple as that, it doesn't get any simpler than that. What if I was to look at stand B iron trigger post 3? 3 buttons. Would it change anything? Let's have a look. No. It changes nothing, and there's no point testing the shoot and stuff because the timing hasn't changed. Essentially what I've figured out is that Yuri can jump out of that iron trigger and there's not much else K-Dash can do bar wait and DP post that stand B. Okay, but what will the iron trigger then be beating is the question. So why would you do the iron trigger at all? So we figured out that one iron trigger can be jumped out of. And I know this seems very long-winded and very not good in general, but stand B to iron trigger can be jumped out of, right? And punished significantly. Maybe not every character can do this, but Yuri, he can do this. So we'll put it under the Yuri matchup and then test it on other characters later, which I won't actually do on video, but I will probably do elsewhere. So stand B iron trigger can be jumped out of and punished significantly. So we'll put that as a minus, right? So then let's go to why even do it. Is there any reason to do it? So the idea of doing stand B iron trigger would be to see if it beats stuff, and post 3 lights, because of the distancing, it might do where it wouldn't beat post 2 lights. So there's post 2 lights, and if memory serves, that looks like it trades. No, that loses stand B. So post 2 lights, it loses clean to stand B. Post 2 lights into iron trigger, loses to stand B from Yuri. And now we know that the stand B beats like everything ever, and there's no reason, we're not beating anything with it basically. What we might beat is like a crouch B mash or something that seems very silly for Yuri to do. Essentially it doesn't seem like a good option. Post 2 lights, right? So we'll do post 3 lights. How is it post 3 lights, right? Could have mistimed, so try again. Try again. That traded. Traded again. Oops, then. Traded again. Now, I actually know already, and the worst this thing can do actually is trade. Because of the distancing. So post 3 it will trade with stand B. It's still a negative in my opinion. Post 3 iron trigger linked will trade with stand B. But what will it beat is it will beat crouch C. Oh, or not, maybe it won't. No, it also trades with crouch B. So we'll go for it and trades with crouch C. Learning something new, right? So far, doesn't seem like a very good option at all. However, where it is actually not a bad choice, and this might seem... This is something to test more with K-Dash. It's something that I just kind of came across when I was doing that kind of testing before. There's a slight delay there. Beats the stand B. And that can go into the shoot, which is not bad damage. You know, it's like don't even remember what the shoot damage is. It's like maybe 90. The B follow up basically. I think it's 90 on top of the iron trigger, so it's like 90 damage punish. If you're really confident and you look for Yuri to do something, you can do EX iron trigger, and you can actually react to this somewhat, just not in the way that you would think, which I'll explain later. So I'll put down in here, explain later, iron trigger with punishing. On your own pressure, on K-dash pressure. So, how I would come across this discovery in the first place, I mean I should probably explain, is post 3 lights, this will not reach K-dash. So something I would have tested basic, not, well, I say basic, but I probably should have covered it in this video. This is something that I would test with all the characters, is saying like post. I mean, this is a game knowledge thing, is that because most characters' lights push to the same degree, Yuri, usually when characters do 3 lights, his standing light kick will no longer reach most characters. And this is something that's kind of more important for Yuri, and as a Flame Yuri player, this is good for me learning as a K-dash player. So, how to put that in perspective and how you would go about testing that kind of stuff is just test it. You know, if you're playing a character, learn when your ranges stop, kind of thing. So like, I know that like post 3 lights with Yuri, I cannot stand B, right? Which means if I block 3 lights, I cannot stand B them, because the pushback is the same, no matter what. If that makes sense. I know that's kind of irregardless to this video, but I guess it's kind of important to know as well, and I guess some people won't know that. But that is something that you will know yourself. So if I do 3 lights and then K-dash goes, oh, stand B, doesn't work, because obviously it's 3 lights and he can't do 3 lights into stand B. So keep it in mind. That is something that is very important for this game in general, and for other games too, if they are similar in how their pushback works and things like that. Is you don't need to look into every situation, you can just look into the general universal situation, if that makes sense. So let's go back to what we were looking at. So what we figured out was that doing iron trigger as a frame trap post stand B straight away is bad. So let's put that in our general notes, is doing iron trigger post stand B. Now, post stand B after 2 or 3 lights straight away is bad, but can be good as a delay, because it can be used for a whiff punish, because iron trigger is actually one of the best uses it has, is whiff punishing. So, I mean, maybe I should split this up into parts. But before so, we'll look at the kind of whiff stand A thing, and then I'll maybe make another part of this at some other point, touching on the corner, specifically with this matchup, with this character, etc, etc. So let's go back to having K-dash on point, as to the player 1. I just realised I may have been breathing into the mic for a little while, and I do apologise if that is the case, and I am not doing a retake. So, we now reach the next point looking at the mid-screen pressure, is we need to now look at that delayed iron trigger, and that's something that we need to test ourselves with, and you need to again apply as if I was in a real match, could I react to this in some way? Could you react to a stand B? No. Can you react to a very slight movement from Yuri with an iron trigger if you have it in mind? Yes, you can. 100%, anyone can. And you might think, that's just really pushing your luck. Well, I don't think so. I don't think seeing that is bad. And even if you can't, even if you learn the timing for the delay to catch, is good. So, you know, there I didn't. So there you go. It can be done and tested with one player, and you have to have all guard on so that you know if you did it right. It can be done. This is again another thing better with 2 players, but this is something to practice and test, is that the delay down trigger can beat things because of the range. But then you wonder, well, Yuri has other things that have good range, so let's look at stand D. Let's look at stand D. So, oops. Stand D will reach. Oops. Again, I apologise for that. Just setting the playback to it. Delayed iron trigger won't beat stand D though. Okay, so what have I got? So delayed iron trigger after 3 lights. After 3 lights beats stand B as whiff punish. That's a plus. However, what isn't a plus is if Yuri does stand D, or again if Yuri jumps, or if Yuri does anything almost. Against the normal iron trigger at least. If Yuri does stand B, D, then he beats the iron trigger. Unfortunate reality. Again, I'm probably using that term a lot. New favourite term, I don't know why. Someone said it the other day. So, we now need to think, well, how do I beat stand D? How do I stop that? Can I stop that? Can I jump over it? It's the first thing I would test, because it's the best punish. And again, I am doing this far too early. Whoops, didn't even get the hop. Not really, no, I can't jump over it. Again, this is something better to test with the second player, but you can test yourself and change the timings a little bit and think about things, but generally I would say no. The answer is no, I cannot jump over this. If he's super late. Even if he's super late, I cannot do that. But if I was to neutral jump CD, or neutral hot CD. So, let's put down minus Yuri stand D beats jump in post 3 lights. So again, this would also be like, we would eventually, like, so let's put this notes on here again. So that again, this looks kind of really muddled up, and it's something that I would fix later. That like this kind of training mode is brainstorming, and once we get the brainstorming out of the way, and this is still only looking at mid-screen stuff, and some of it will apply in the corner. Once we get brainstorming out of the way, we can start looking at the other stuff. And when you can look at the other stuff, well, not the other stuff, we start looking at stuff more in detail, so this is only scratching the surface of how to play a matchup or how to play a character, and you know, all this stuff I'm learning how it works against the Yuri. A lot of this stuff, when I then go to the next character, I can go, well, this character has this that's similar to Yuri. Say Kyo, his stand D is somewhat similar, not quite the same. Let's test it in the same situation, see what happens. Is it the same? Yeah, oh well, unfortunate, I lose. Wah wah. That's what you have to think about, and all this knowledge transfers across different matchups and different characters, and even if you have never put yourself into training mode against them, if you go, well, you can put in your head, you can imagine that the situations are similar, depending on their buttons. Say, talking Kyo again, his stand B doesn't reach as high as Yuri's, so in the same situation his stand B might not be a good option. In fact, I know it isn't as good of an option. His crouch C isn't as good as an option because it's not as horizontal either. And it's more vertical. So I know that those situations will be different, and those would have to be looked at differently when I look at Kyo. But if I was to, you know, I'm kind of cheating here. If I was to look at Claw Yuri, then most of the situations would be the same. You know, let's think of a good example that's similar to Yuri and how things work. Probably not that many. Psyche, maybe. Maybe not with the stand B, but definitely stand D is very, very good. Things like that, I guess. I'm actually having a hard time thinking. Who has a stand D? It's kind of similar to Yuri, or stand B. Oh, Kim. Kim is very similar, and his stand B can be used to anti-air, and his stand D can be used to anti-air, and things like that. So I'd have to look at it in a similar situation when I went to Kim. Okay? So, I know again this is very rambly kind of video, but this is the best you're getting out of me, so you either like it or you don't, and I don't really care. But get back on track. Let's talk again about. So we've covered kind of iron trigger whiff punishing, and you should try and get in your head and try and practice the timing for it. Even if you're not looking for something and then doing it, getting the timing of how or when to do it based on then pressing that stand B as a reversal or something like that is very good. It's something that you should look at doing yourself, and knowing that iron trigger is the kind of way it is, and that the C version will combo from almost any distance basically that it hits. Like let's have Yuri with a stand D like right in front of me. Yeah. Oops, still way too early. Still. You know, look at that. It's magical. Oops. Oops. You can run into it very easily. So it's a good neutral tool. And this is something you would find out only when looking into the character and the kind of detail. Let's just do this like super quickly, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's just Yuri's animation being wonky, like his hitbox disappears long before his leg actually retracts. And it's not just the hurtbox, it's actually the hitbox as well. And you can do stuff like that if you're like super cool like me and by accident mess up your iron trigger and get crouch C teleport, and then you can throw him and be super cool. Don't do that. I mean, do it if you think it's gonna work, but it's very risky. So there you go. At almost any range, basically, that iron trigger will combo into the shot, and it's 88 damage. I'm pretty sure that's with the counter hit, but I'm not too sure. Let's turn all guard off. And no, it's just 88 damage. There's no counter hit involved. Okay. So yeah, about 90 damage, say. So every time you hit that, you're getting like 90 damage, essentially. Which is good. So iron trigger, especially the C version. C version is a good whiff punish. And obviously so is EX. EX's whiff punish ability is amazing. Because it, well, I messed that up because it should have ran forward. But not only is it super fast, but it whiff punishes so well, and the screen carry on EX is insane. Almost corner to corner. So iron trigger EX version is also a good one, and that's something you'll experiment with, or you should experiment with. I'm not going to go and sit and experiment with it in this video because I feel like it is something that is basic to the character, I guess. It's a basic that you would pick up through experience or through doing this further testing and realizing, hold on a minute, and then going back and looking at it. It's something I think anyone would look at eventually over time with experience, rather than, you know, something that a lot of people wouldn't look at ever at all, which is what this video is intending to try and cover. So I think now I've covered everything I want to cover from a mid-screen perspective. Oh wait, incorrect. I haven't covered the standee whiffing on crouches thing yet. There's a few things about this, and there's one actually that's kind of a glitch in the game that some people get confused about. So let's talk about standee whiffing on crouches, okay? So here's the thing that people get confused about. This isn't real. This is not real. You cannot throw at that speed at all. It does not work. If the opponent just blocks, that does not work. That is a glitch in the game to do with changing state between a crouch and stand, along with the all guard function. I don't know how many people actually know that, but personally I find it very obvious. So let's put it on the records, right? Just to, and then stand up, right? Whoops. So, oh, okay. Wait. I cannot throw at the same timing at all. It doesn't work. And if I put it on crouch all guard, you'll see the same thing. It doesn't work. It's because the AI changes state. See, like, it's the same as this, so, because the AI has to change state, I believe. No, I guess not, because it naturally goes to crouch. Guess maybe if it naturally went to standing? I don't know. Basically, that isn't real, and you just saw basically that it's not real by doing that before. And looking at... Whoops. Basically, it doesn't work, and it's a glitch. However, you will find, but sometimes when I do that, you know, I do catch people, and well, there's a reason for that, and it's that they mash. Just for example, right? That was a pretty extreme example. Oops. I do apologise. Getting this down on your own is very kind of difficult, in my opinion. Yeah, so you seen me throw there super early, and that's because Yuri did an offensive action, and when you do an offensive action, you lose all your throwing, well, basically right there and then. Doesn't matter if you're doing an attack, if you try to, even if you try to jump, although you can't throw jumping frames, so it doesn't matter, but I do know that that is an offensive action, having looked at the game and stuff. If you backdash, you lose it all as well. I believe anything that puts you in the air will lose it just for the sake of air grabs being workable post throws and stuff. I think that's probably why that's the case. And obviously anti-air grabs and stuff like that working. But basically, if you think you've got some like super cool throw setup with crouch B, stand A, whiff, throw, it's not as fast as you think, and you should always test it with the CPU set to crouching on guard, because then you can get the real timing down for your throw, instead of the super quick timing that when you actually try it against someone who's just going to sit there and block, it's not going to work. So, there you have it. Wait a little longer, it works. Obviously the downside to this obviously is, well, let's forget it. Forget that. So forget the glitch, let's go back to looking at standy whiffing on crouches and stuff, and how this adds to your pressure game. So how this adds to your pressure game is, the biggest problem that this has is that it's huge risk to do crouch B, standy, walk up throw. Whoops. But it is another condition, if that makes sense, another condition that you can set in the game that will make your opponent think you're going to do something. But the risk is huge. The risk is huge in that if they mash crouching something and you do the delayed version of the throw essentially, so that you actually get the throw if they just keep blocking, is that they will hit you, they can convert it, they can go into HD, EX moves, damage, anything they goddamn want. The risk is absolutely humongous, and that is universal. That's nothing we have to look at matchup specific wise, but it is definitely a universal risk. But of course you can do things like that, or you know, 2 into that and things like that. You can, it's another way to condition people, but I would say nothing really changes. Nothing really changes in how you do it. That works regardless, kind of thing, you know, like one crouching something into cross up and things like that, and that's just how you look at it is basically just use it as another way to open people up, but do be careful, kind of thing. And this applies to all characters, and the reason I didn't cover it, and I said earlier, is it's kind of a universal thing, and the mix-up that comes from it is completely universal. It doesn't apply specifically to any character or anything like that, realistically. I mean, maybe you can talk about it being like, oh, I can beat people's throws if they don't have a close C that hits above them and things like that by doing that and then jumping over them and all that stuff. Fantastic, right? But that is standard KOF gameplay, so not covered here, and I'm not going to go into it. I'm not going to show examples but I will say it is definitely viable, and it is something to keep an eye on. But always assess your risk rewards, and always take that into account when playing and when creating an idea of how to play in your head. So like this training mode stuff that I've done now, and again, as I said, this is only mid-screen. I say that the point of this is to understand the options on both sides when you're pressuring with a character, and then to try and understand how that would apply in a match, and then how you would build your pressure around that on top of what you know from the base KOF gameplay. You've now looked at specific situations and how they work for your character as well. So you need to bundle everything in. You can't focus on just the KOF fundamentals, and you can't focus on just your character's specific options either. You have to combine both, and that's how you can build from there. But this is how you figure out what your character's specific options are, and that's what I tried to cover today. And I know it is very thrown together and things like that, but with the time I have and a lot of other stuff I've kind of got going on and stuff to do right now, I don't actually have that much time for the game in the first place, so this is about the best I can give you guys. If someone wants to go and make another more like cut down video that explains it better or more in detail and stuff, be my guest. You know, if you want to make an abridged version of this that cuts out all the useless crap that I've likely spewed in between that doesn't really matter, the times I repeated myself, go for it. Be my guest. If you want to write an article where you just take all the ideas that I put down and write them out or something, go for it. You know, I'm all happy for that. If you need clarification on anything, talk to me, because this is the one thing I never quite understood. Is some people will see my video, kinda get it, kinda don't, but they never ask me why, or why something is the way it is, or they never ask for more details and stuff like that. And I'm not gonna say I don't like it, but I don't like it. You know, I don't like dislike you for not doing it or something like that, but I don't like people being afraid, because as people who know me and have talked to me and as a friend, and people who have just like randomly approached me, I am willing to tell you goddamn anything about this game. I hide almost nothing. If you ask me about something specifically, I will always tell you. If you don't know what it is, that means you can't ask me, and those are the hidden things. Some of them are on this channel, and a few people have figured them out and stuff like that, but they're all mostly non-viable, and some of them are kind of viable, and they're mostly for fun and stuff, and if I think anything's too stupid, I won't tell you. But yes, do approach me in some form, whether it's Steam, Twitter, email, Skype, whatever. I'll put anything and everything in the description, except maybe my Skype or Facebook. If you want those, message me directly through YouTube or something, or on Twitter, and I'll DM you them or something like that. I'm more than happy to do that, although I don't check my Twitter too much, so I would suggest YouTube is the best option, because it emails me whenever I get a message, or put a comment in the comment thing, because I get an email about those too, and I'll look at those, and if you ask there, then I'll send you it, blah blah blah. So that, I think, covers as much as I can cover, but there is one last thing. I mean, I did just show it off there, but one light into cross-up works as well for K-Dash, and I actually planned on touching on this way later, after I did the corner stuff too, but because I don't know how long it'll be before I get to doing another video about how the corner works in comparison, this actually doesn't need a lot of testing or explaining at all, and because you've already figured out from a further out range that he has these options basically. So he still has, at this range here, he still has the RDP option, and it still loses to the same stuff, but it will lose to more of the same stuff, if that makes sense, like because you've got 2 crouch Bs post the first one to catch it, as opposed to 1. You're more likely to catch it, and you can confirm if you catch it, if you catch him buffering it. It also means that you can, he needs to do close C, maybe his crouch C won't be as good anymore. You know, these are this doesn't need specifically a lot of testing, but primarily when I say I want to kind of, I'd say this one is more of a use your own idea when you're approaching this one, because this one is like you already have an idea of how things work anyway and how his options are. Just compare them in the situation, think about the range, think about how many lights and how much more mix-up potential you have basically as K-Dash, and how Yuri fits into that and what the risk reward is. And when you put that all together, you can start building this into your game as well. And I'd say when you're building this kind of pressure game, and I know this is taking a long time, it will be a lot shorter when you do it yourself, because obviously you won't have to stop and explain and try to talk through it in a really bad way like me, because I'm not very good with words. It will come a lot faster, basically. I can't really explain much more than that. Like I said, I'm not very good with words, but it will be a lot faster for you to do so, and how quickly you can implement this into your game is completely up to you, and it comes down to your own practice and your own thinking. The biggest thing I would say is when you start learning another character, or you start trying to learn this more in-depth stuff, is to focus on learning that when you're playing games. So focus implementing it into your current game plan, even if it does make you lose against people that you wouldn't lose to before because you're not used to it or something like that, or you're used to playing off their faults. Like if they have a really bad habit of doing or mashing or something a lot, even then, and you know your stuff will work, try sometimes to not take advantage of that and try your other stuff, because you want to at least have the idea that you can do it in a match and you are going to do it, so that when you do play players that don't fall for the same tricks, or you play players that won't, you won't know the habits of straight away and things like that, that you can start to figure them out as things go along. And if you do have players that are willing to do this kind of stuff as well, is sit down, the both of you take characters that you both play, and both of you go through each other's stuff with each other and try and talk through it and think about the matchup, take notes with each other and stuff like that, because I think that is quite possibly the biggest helpful thing for me. And again, I will say, this might not be effective for you in the slightest. This kind of teaching method and stuff like that, it might not be, and maybe other people won't like it, and maybe stuff like that. If you don't enjoy it at all, and you don't enjoy doing this, then you aren't going to get much out of it, because at the end of the day, you're going to, the information is going to stick with you a lot more if you enjoy it. And how you learn, you could learn from in-game, just playing matches. If you're the kind of person who can pick up on stuff, or who can improvise in matches, see if your improvisation worked, and then make use of that later. Great, good for you. Do it. I'm not saying forget that and try and focus on this or anything like that. I'm not saying this is the best way to learn or anything like that. Me personally, when I improvise in a match, if it works, great, but recreating it without actually going and practicing and testing it, I'm not very good at. So if I see a situation or something happens that I don't expect, I'll go and have a look later. But some people can see that situation and go, oh, I know why that happened, I can make that happen again, let's go from there, and that will just work for them, and that's good. But for me it doesn't work, and for other people who might be in the same boat as me and has the same idea but maybe just doesn't know how to approach their learning and stuff, that's what this video was for. I know this has probably went on for a long time, I'm not quite sure how long, I'm sure far too long. I will make another video that will cover the corner. I'm sure it will be shorter because the same ideas that happened mid-screen will apply in the corner. And going from there, I would say, you know, if anybody has any ideas to do stuff like this themselves, I encourage you to maybe record it, and maybe record yourself talking over it and stuff like that, because we don't see a lot of that content in KOF, I guess, very much at all, and I know it is a very multi-language game and stuff like that, but I do think that this kind of stuff is beneficial to anyone looking to learn, and I'm sure there are little bits here and there that even if you don't learn the same way, maybe you've picked up in this video, oh, I didn't know that before, or something along that nature. You know, any random tidbits of information you have or anything you can give on a matchup could be useful to someone, and so I would encourage it as much as possible to you know, kind of put content out there, more content, because if no one's making this stuff, then a lot of people will hit a plateau and stuff like that, and I don't like to see that very often. And I would like to see a lot more content coming out of the community for this kind of stuff. And if you do get the idea that, again I'm rambling, but if you do get the idea to go into training modes and you've got a bit more time, if you've got like an hour or something like that, and you go into training mode for the first time with this kind of attitude or style going into it and looking at a specific matchup, please, I encourage recording that, because I think it's good to see how it is for someone who doesn't know or hasn't done this before, because I have done this before, not specifically with K-Dash and Flamey Yuri, but I know enough about both characters anyway, I can figure it out as I go. But I think it would be beneficial for other people to see, you know, the struggles of another person first trying to get into this kind of idea of kind of logical approach to matchups and training mode sort of stuff, and going through the same kind of struggles. You know, I'm only good at doing like the recording thing and pressing a button that is like randomly on my arcade stick outside of my normal button layout, because I've had to do it for so often and so long, because I can't be bothered waiting for a second player to be available so that I can do it. And obviously there's no online training mode, so it'd take away from time where I could be playing offline games, and I don't like that. But yeah, with that I think I'm done for now. I will be back later with another video covering the corner in this specific matchup. I do apologise if this has been a bit rambling, has went on for a long time, but as I said, I don't have as much time to kind of break it all down or make a video or script it or have it all in text or something like that. I just do not have the current mental strength to do something like that, nor do I have the time really. So if you stuck around for this long, thank you very much. I do appreciate any feedback at all. If it's all bad, go for it, hit me. I don't care about criticism. If you think this is stupid and long and rambly and complete waste of time, say it. I don't care. If you think this helped in any way, say it. I'm so happy if that is the case. And if you do have any questions about any of this, if I haven't been clear about something, either leave a comment or get in touch with me in some way, shape or form. I will leave my Steam and my Twitter in the description at the very least, and you can contact me through the YouTube comments, Steam, Twitter or whatever if you want to get hold of my Skype or my Facebook or something like that. I am perfectly fine to do that. Right, so that's me done. Thank you once again, and I'll be back soon.